From today, we are expected to have a study class of the Bhagavad-Gita, and we have 8 classes in all. Bhagavad-Gita is a book of 18 chapters, and these chapters contain many subjects in discussion. Instead of having a general discourse on all the 18 chapters, let us have a little bit more intense study of a part of it. Otherwise, it amounts to only public platform lectures, which mean some pastime, some pleasant attraction, and no real use. We can have something instructive in the public lectures also, but when we wanted to have a study class, it is better to have an intensive study than to have an extensive study. Many of you know that the Bhagavad-Gita is a book taken from a bigger book. Bigger book is called Mahabharata. Which is one of the 2 grand scriptures of Indian literature. And this Mahabharata contains 18 books. The Bhagavad Gita takes place in the 4th book. The word Bhagavad Gita contains 2 words. The first meaning, the Lord. Gita means song. That's why it is translated into English by Edwin Arnold as the Lord's Song, with a bigger title, Song Celestial. And the Bhagavad Gita is described as a discourse by Lord Krishna in the form of conversation between 2 characters, Krishna and Arjuna. Arjuna was questioning and Krishna was answering, and the content is called Bhagavad Gita. I will give you a context of what happened before the conversation. The Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata, they are called Itihasa branch of literature. Itihasa means a type of world scripture in which 2 applied aspects. The first is the historical incident, and the second is a symbolic incident. When these 2 aspects are composed together in a book, then the book is called Itihasa in Sanskrit. And here the historical incident was the global war that took place about 5,000 years ago. That is, at the beginning of this Kali Yuga, there were 2 brothers who were the son of a king, emperor of India. And among the 2 brothers, one was blind and the other was white in his complexion. The blind fellow was disqualified to be a king, though he was elder, by the people and the parliament. So the younger brother was elected as a ruler, but he had great respect to his elder brother, and for all practical purposes he treated his elder brother as the real emperor, and himself was looking after the affairs of administration. And this fellow after some time, he
Et,
left everything to his elder brother and went to the Himalayas to have his spiritual retreat. And then he was having 5 sons. And this blind fellow was having many sons. According to the story, he was having 100 sons. I told you there is not only historical but also symbolic in the story. And the eldest son of the white king was elder than the eldest son of the blind king. And there was the discussion about the next emperor, who was to be accepted, the son of the blind or the son of the white. And by behavior, the 5 sons of the white king were very good, and the white king suddenly died, leaving his 2 wives and 5 children. And the blind king and his sons made many attempts to kill these children, so that the son of the blind should become the emperor. And finally, there was a game between the 2 sets of brothers, on the agreement that those who lose the game should go to the forest for 12 years, and then after spending 12 years in the forest, they should spend 1 year incognito. And if anyone identifies them within that period of 1 year,
et si quelqu'un venait à les identifier pendant cette période d'1 an,
then they have to spend once again 12 years in the forest and 1 year incognito. And on that agreement, they played the gamble or the game, in which the sons of the blind king deceived them, and the sons of the white king lost the game. And in obedience to the agreement, they went and lived in the forest for 12 years and spent 1 year incognito somewhere near Kashmir. And then they came back. The blind king and his sons refused to return their half kingdom to them. And there were 2 parties among the rulers of that time, and the situation precipitated a war, and some of the rulers were on one side and some on the other side, and many countries and many continents took part in the war. So before that war was started, these 2 fellows approached the war field. Arjuna is the 3rd of the 5 brothers of the white king, and Krishna was their brother-in-law, that is father's sister's son. He accepted to drive the chariot of Arjuna in the war, and they for the first time went in the middle of the armies that were being gathered for the war. And he saw many people among his own brothers, cousins, uncles and grandfathers, and he was touched with compassion, and he said that war was very bad, and that is something which the cruel fellows should do. We should be compassionate and good, and let us be peaceful and have a peaceful way of doing things. And then Krishna said, if the armies contain your brothers, your cousins, your uncles and your grandfathers, then if you feel that war is cruel, you must be a worst scoundrel, because previously you have done many hundreds of wars. You fought cruelly and killed many thousands of heroes. You never felt that war was cruel, because there were not your uncles and your cousins and your brothers and grandfathers. So if you have your own people, your idea of law is something, and if you have some other people, your idea of law is some other thing. This is what is called diplomatic morality, or what is called crocodile tears. That means you are a scoundrel. This never proves that you are moral. This only proves that you are a seasoned politician of the day. And if you want to be sincere, you know what you have to do and you know what you ought not have done. Don't change your philosophy according to the situation. Don't dance according to the tune. Have your own ideas about good and bad. If you don't have any such ideas, don't pretend to be moral by speaking false morals from your lips. If you want to tell me what I feel true about it, I will tell you. Then he said, my mind is not working properly now, you please tell me. And then Krishna began to narrate him a few things, and then Arjuna had his own doubts and suspicions. He had his own arguments and questioning. To all his questions, Krishna gave answers, not only intelligent answers, but also what Krishna believed to his core as true. Because intelligence is no solution to the human being any day. It is only our conviction and our self-confidence that helps us, and it is only our self-satisfaction to ourselves that becomes solution to mankind. But intelligence is never a solution to the human being. The more intelligent the human being is, the more are the problems he faces. For solutions, it is not the intelligence that is required, but it is the sense of goodness and a sense of acceptance of goodness that is required. The first thing is a very, very cheap thing, what is called intelligence. Every dog of a human fellow has intelligence, but one has to cultivate the habit of accepting for himself goodness. So there was this conflict between intelligence and goodness in Arjuna, and Krishna cleared the conflict in the heart of Arjuna, and the essence of the conversation is what we call Bhagavad-Gita. Another greatness of Bhagavad-Gita is, then at the end of the conversation, Arjuna asked Krishna, tell me what I have to do. Then Krishna said, I told you how to think and how to come to a conclusion. I have given you the science of doing and the science of thinking. I have also given you what is called the science of devotion, and it is for you to have your own solution. If I bring a solution to the situation, it will be my solution, not your solution. And you should have your own solution, because you are the man to decide and act. With all the material I gave you about the science of thinking and concluding, it is for you to come to your own conclusion. Now if you decide that war is not good, we will go back. If you decide that it is good to conduct this war, I will stand behind you and we will do it. So I only wanted you to decide after knowing how to decide. Otherwise, if you decide because of your relationships and brothers and fellows, it is a dog decision, not a human decision. So a decision having no permanent values is not good for a human being. So have your own decision. That is the conclusion of this book. That's why it is among the greatest of the world scriptures of all time. And there is much symbolic also in the book. The conversations took place between the two fellows for about half an hour or 1 hour while they were going around the armies. But it was composed into a beautiful book by the author of the Mahabharata. And since he is among the grandest of all poets that world has ever produced, he had his own way of presentation of the conversation with all the required symbolism and similes and metaphors. Here, a few words about the symbolism the author used in this book. For your information, the author of this book is called the grandfather of the fellows who fought the war. We have the symbolism of chariot, horses. REINS పగ్గాలంటే కూడా reins, you know, driver, and the hero who is in the chariot. The chariot is a symbol of your vehicle, that is your body, not only physical but also physical, etheric and mental. That means the three lower principles. 5 horses are described as the fellow is having to his chariot. They are symbolic of what are called the sense organs, that is the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch. So the vehicle is the chariot in which we live, and our senses are the 5 horses, because the horses run. See, we can stand here and our sight can go to a distance. Our physical body is here, we can listen to the sound of the telephone from a distance. So the senses can run in all directions. So they are called the horses. And there is what is called the mind. The rein is called mind. Now the question is about the driver and the hero. Both of them are called I am in the chariot. And there is a big confusion. Who is the real I am? And the total effect or the import of the whole conversation is the proper understanding of the real I am and the false I am between these two fellows. This is what is exactly called the science of yoga. Of course, nowadays in the Occident, the word yoga is used in many damn ways. Every fellow uses the word in his own way, but yet there is a correct way of using it.
Easy.
The standard is not the fellow on the street, but the scriptures. If a fellow can do about 50 or 100 asanas, he calls himself a yogi. This is most unfortunate. If a fellow can drink 1 bottle of nitric acid and show a performance, the fellow calls himself a yogi. That is doing something abnormal, different from the normal. If there is something abnormality, it means a disease, not yoga, please remember. The word yoga has its own scientific definition, which books like Patanjali and the Bhagavad-Gita will give you. Of course, it includes the asanas and pranayama, etc. But the correct meaning of the word yoga is to identify the real I am between these two fellows, and then identifying yourself with the real I am, and then having that type of mind and senses in your daily life, and then doing things with that disposition of mind, irrespective of the environment and situation. And the result is inevitably you are successful and you are never affected by the environment, whereas the fellows in the environment will be attracted to you if they are to become better. This is what yoga means. And now, among the two I ams, you know, one is negative and the other is positive. The mind is the negative fellow, because the 5 horses of the chariot have no proper driver. Each horse tries to pull in its own direction, and what happens to the chariot and the person in the chariot? Suppose 5 horses are there to a chariot. When you show some fine grass to the horses from 5 different directions, for example, food or drink or sex, that is what we call grass to the horses of the senses. And each horse pulls the chariot in its own direction. eat the grass, and the chariot begins to move. Sometimes it moves in all directions, and still you cannot call it journey. And if you want to take a journey in such a chariot, any one of the horses may lead you under a car or a truck on the street, because they have no sources to drive you according to the traffic rules. That is how these 5 horses are working with the ordinary human being. The eyes are engaged with reading something, because the eyes will draw the mind to the book. In the meanwhile, there is music in the stereo. The ears will pull you to the stereo, and the eyes are pulling you to the book. The result is you can neither enjoy music nor the book. And when there is food on the table, the nose pulls you to the table. So 3 horses pulling the chariot in 3 different directions. That is the fate of the human beings who call himself very busy in the day. We know the result: hypertension and eating many dirty medicines, going into insomnia or arthros or gastric troubles, any one of these mental or physical diseases, are going into psychosomatic levels, or depressions and obsessions. This is the fate of the fellow whose chariot is drawn by the horses in all directions. So the person who is there in the chariot, he is attacked by the 5 horses from 5 directions, and the mind is pulled by the 5 senses out.
So,
He is always receiving impressions from environment, and he has nothing to live of his own life. He has sound or light or smell or taste as his own dirty life, but he has no pure life of his own filtered from these things to live. And there is another fellow living inside the mind who is ignored, and who is the real I am in us. And there are 2 phases in the human life. In one phase, we are the driver of our own chariot. When the mind exists as a negative fellow, receiving every nonsensical impression from the environment, that is, existing as only a receiving pole, nothing to transmit. Then after some time,
après quelque temps,
when the right initiation takes place in the presence of a real guru or spiritual master, then you will discover yourself something different from the mind. You will understand that you are a self-brilliant fellow, having your own brilliance shining into the environment, shining out in the form of mind, and shining out in the form of the faculties of your 5 senses. Before knowing this, we live a helpless life. After knowing this, we live a life of someone else who was there inside. He is making us respire, and he is making our heart beat, and you will begin to identify yourself as that higher I am in you, as is different from the lower I am. The lower I am is called the negative I am, who belongs to the 3 lower principles, that is the physical body, the etheric body, and the mind. This is called the false I am or the mind. Whereas the real I am in yourself, you belong to the higher principles in yourself. That is the Buddhic plane, the Nirvanic, Paranirvanic, and the Mahaparanirvanic plane. Actually, this is the meaning of I am in you, whereas the 3 lower principles are not yourself. They are objective to yourself. Just like an ice block is floating upon water, see, like the ice water, which is not different from water, appears as something different because of the temporary state of difference. You will appear differently like your own body and etheric body and mind, and you will accept the existence of the lower principles which are false. Then you will place all your hopes and aspirations upon this false fellow, which results in life as a daily disappointment.